Hey difference maker, it's Kirby, trust you're well. Today I want to talk to you about how to write copy. So if you're not sure what copy is, it's essentially the words that we write on your website or your landing pages, your Facebook ads, your sales letters, your social media posts. All those words theoretically are designed to influence someone to engage with you, or to influence someone to take an action with you and opt in or purchase your thing or get on your email list or whatever it is that you're looking for them to do, and the thing that you're looking to achieve from that post or website. So what I want to do is just take you over my shoulder here and just go through a very basic framework that I personally use to write the sort of basic copy for any of my offers or any of my adverts or emails that you might have received. Because I just think it's a really simple way to make sure that what you're saying is going to be delivered in a way that is heard by your target audience. And that's really important, because the worst thing you could do is have the best product that no one knows about. And the reason that people struggle to resonate is because they don't think it's for them. Ultimately, they just think that doesn't apply to me and they scroll on by, or they delete the email because the subject doesn't grab their attention. And I think it's such a simple exercise to do that it's worth doing if you want to make more progress and get more engagement with your audience, but also if you want to make a bigger difference. If you want to get more clients, if you want to have more customers in your business and you want to have a bigger impact, you've got to be able to stop them in their tracks and get their attention long enough for them to take you seriously and recognize that what you're providing is suitable to provide the solution that they're looking for. All right? So let's jump in over my shoulder now and we'll have a bit of a look at this framework. So what I want to cover with you in this video is how to write copy. And essentially this can be used for your website, for your landing pages, for sales letters, for adverts, for social media posts, wherever you have words written down, or even on videos. If you're talking as I am right now, you can use this exact same framework for that. Now, this is not the sort of definitive copywriting framework. Of course, there's like a million books on this subject. But at the end of the day, if you want to just get some ideas flowing and have something to expand upon, then this is a really good framework to use. And it works. I mean, I've used this now to sell products and services, to write letters to corporations that I wanted to work with. I've used this to write social media posts. I've used this to write Facebook adverts, some of which are running right now, and getting me good opt-ins. Okay, so it really does work. Don't overcomplicate it. Answer the questions and it'll make a lot more sense in a second as I take you through this. Now, the first thing we want to do, just to sort of get you in the right headspace, is to come up with a basic headline. And yet again, there are, hundreds of variations on headlines, but the sort of standard formula is always how to do this without doing that, or how to do this even if you've done that. And that's where I want you to start. And this is, again, you can change this up to suit yourself, but just to get you in the right headspace, I just want you to write out your basic headline for me as you do this exercise. So just think of a product or a service that you'd like to sell, whether that's your coaching or an online course, and just think, what is the promise that this is going to make, the outcome that the client wants, and what is the thing they want to avoid, or what is the thing they've already tried. So as an example, and I'm just going to use something completely random, I'm going to say that I wanted to suddenly change careers and decide that I wanted to teach people how to invest in real estate. All right, completely random, don't know anything about the subject, so it should be a fun example to use. So the headline might sound like this: how to invest in real estate without saving a big deposit, or how to invest in real estate even if you've been bankrupt before. They might be two very broad, very strange examples, but at least it gives you some concept of what to do there. So go ahead and write down, just on a piece of paper, just scribble down just a rough headline, just to get you in the ballpark, thinking about X being the outcome that the client wants, and Y being something that they've either tried before or something that they don't have already. Okay? Now, in order to write the copy itself, which is the body of this, what we're going to do is you're going to answer 6 questions that I'm going to take you through now. And just to clarify with this as well, this headline that we've just created, if you were going to send out an email to your audience, the headline would be the subject line. And so if you're struggling right now with open rates that aren't quite as strong as you would expect, or you just think you can do a bit better, just try keeping it as simple as that. Just saying, how to do this without doing that, and send that out as an email subject and see how much better your open rate is, because we are very outcome focused individuals. in the human race, and so you might find that improves things just a little bit. So anyway, on to these 6 questions. So the first question I wanted to answer is, who do you want to work with? And I want you to be very specific about this, because if you can work with more than one customer or more than one type of person, I want you to do these 6 questions for each of those people. So you do essentially a separate piece of copy for each person in your market. And the reason for that is that if you go very generic and you say, well, Kirby, I can deal with everyone, and you write your copy trying to hit everyone, it's not going to hit anyone, because the person that needs it's going to think, yeah, that's not for me. And we don't want that to be the case. So I want you to, write down the specific person that you want to work with, and if there are more than one specific types of people, that makes sense, that you want to work with or that you can work with, then write them all down in a list and do this exercise for each individual. Great example of that, in my case, using this stupid real estate example that I'm making up as we go along. I might have someone who is a first home buyer who wants to buy real estate, who's never purchased real estate before. I also might have someone who's an investor who might want to find out new ways to purchase more real estate. So they're 2 completely different markets. Even though the outcome is the same, that they want to buy real estate, you can imagine if I went out to the market and said, here's the simplest way ever to invest in real estate, the first home buyer might get freaked out and not think there's enough detail for them to understand the whole process. The investor might think it's not sophisticated enough for them, and so therefore I don't get the benefit of speaking to anyone in the market, even though my product is perfectly suitable to both of those people. Okay, so that's the first thing I wanted to write down. Now the second thing I wanted to look at is and think about is, what is the actual problem they have? And specifically with this, I want you to dig deeper. So if someone wants to buy real estate as an investment and they don't know how to do it, that's not the real problem. The real problem, if we dig in, is why do they want to invest in real estate to start with? Maybe it's because they saw their parents go broke and they don't want to be in that situation. Maybe the investor has already purchased 7 properties and he is struggling to get financing from the bank, and he knows that he's got to retire in 3 years, and as a result of that, he needs to make sure he's got enough money set aside because his superannuation or his 401k or his pension, depending on where you are in the world, isn't adequate to cover that, so he needs to find new ways to invest. Okay? So that's what I mean by the problem. That's the real problem. It's not just the surface level stuff. So if you work with other people, let's say, for example, you work with relationships, or you work with career, or you work with someone's life. You want to help them achieve better goals. You want to take them to high levels of performance if you're a coach. Their actual problem is probably not that they think they want some clarity on their life. Their actual problem is probably that they're feeling unmotivated, and because of that, their marriage might be suffering a bit. Or, they might not be having as much sex as they want to have. As crazy as all of this might sound, and as sort of graphic as that might sound, that is the reality. And when you can start speaking that language, the language that they understand is the stuff that's going on internally. They might not want to tell the world that they're having crap sex because they're stressed out and they can't sleep properly, but if that's the real problem and you say that in your copy, they're going to say, geez, that sounds like me, even if they don't want to admit it out loud, right? So write down what their actual problem is specifically, okay? And again, if you've got more than one person in your market, do that same thing for each of the people that you've written down as potential clients, or dinner date clients, as I would call them. Now, this is where we get into the real juicy stuff. And this is what I think, certainly from my experience, about 9 out of 10 people never ever look at this part. They never ever dig into what they've already seen. They just assume that they're ready to buy the product or service, and they go barreling in with an offer, and they don't take into consideration that, people aren't silly. They're on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn and YouTube and Google, and they're seeing stuff already that relates to the same thing that you do potentially. All right. So this next question is really important for you to think about. And even if you can ask your clients this, or your prospects in some way, whether that's on your social media or clients that you've already worked with, ask them this: what have they seen or heard already? And the reason for this is, let's say the problem is, this real estate investor that I'm talking about in my example. Let's say that he's already been to seminars around real estate investment, and he's already worked with a real estate coach who teaches this stuff, and he's spent $20,000, right? Now, they're the things that he's seen and heard. He's seen, the speaker. He's heard the spruiker at the event. And then that leads to the next question. What did they do? All right, because of what they had seen and heard. So did they invest in that course that was recommended? Did they watch the webinar? Did they subscribe to the channel? Did they join the email list? Did they attend the 4-day event on the other side of the world? Did they get coaching for 6 months? Have they already seen a counselor? Have they already decided that they can't be helped? Have they seen nothing at all yet? Like maybe they're on day 1 and they've got no idea about anything that relates to solving their problem. All right? And when you've got that, write that down as well. And this will make more sense when I piece this together in a second. Now, question 5 is, what happened when they tried that? So what is the actual result they got based on the answer to question 4? So if question 4 is what did they try? Question 5 is what happened when they tried it. So again, in the same example for my real estate investor, let's say that he'd already spoken to an investment firm who promised that they could do real estate investments even if he had a problem with borrowing more money or more capacity. And what actually happened was that they couldn't get him what they anticipated. Now, the reason this is important is because if they've achieved something already or not achieved something already, and they've already had a promise made to them and that promise hasn't been delivered, we really want to make sure we hit that in our copy. We want to make sure the words that we speak get rid of the potential roadblock or the potential I've seen this before factor. And the way that we do that is by understanding what they have done already. So if, in your copy, if you say, look, I know you've probably attended seminars before and perhaps you've even worked with a company who may have promised you X, Y, and Z, but the reality is most of the people that we speak to find that that doesn't end up with a good result. And here's why. And you tell them why and you make it about making them feel like it wasn't their fault, if that makes sense. So again, if I give you the example of the real estate investor, if the real estate investor has spoken to this investment firm and they said, yes, we can definitely get you some more finance approved, and that hasn't happened, that could be quite embarrassing for an investor to not be able to get more finance. So if you say something like, look, most people in the situation where they've spoken to existing investment firms might have found that even though the promises were grand, that when it came to the crunch and applying for the finance, sophisticated investors struggle because of this reason, and this reason. And unless you're working with a company that really understands those things, and they've got the right interests at heart for the investor, then finance is very hard to get approved. But when you can solve those things, like we do with our clients, then finance is extremely easy to get approved. All right, so what you're doing is you're basically juxtaposing, there's a big word for you, juxtaposing what they've already experienced, and you're using that as leverage for any sort of problem that they foresee from what they've tried, or any excuses that they might be making about why they can't try you instead. All right. Now, on the opposite of that, of course, if they have tried something and it's worked extraordinarily well for them, guess what? We want to leverage that too. So, we might say something like, most investment firms that our clients work with, as sophisticated investors, find that it's very easy to get people in front of the best properties because they know they're seasoned investors. And so we also use the same people to search for our properties. And I know this is a completely random example. I've got no idea about real estate, as you can probably tell. So don't take this as gospel, and certainly don't go and use it in your copy. This is purely for example purposes. But you can see how all I'm doing is I'm using the story of something that's already there. I'm not recreating the wheel here. I'm just answering very basic questions to give my copy direction and flow. Okay? So the final question is, how did the result that they got leave them feeling? So if it went really well, did it leave them feeling awesome? Like they didn't want to work with anyone else ever? All right? It's good for you to know that, because you need to be able to sell against that person or that product or service. If it left them feeling really frustrated or like it wouldn't work for them, then of course we want to know that too, because we want to be able to say that in our copy. We want to be able to say, hey, look, if you've worked with another investment firm and they haven't been able to deliver on the promises they made, that could leave you feeling very frustrated, because you want to go out there and buy more properties. But until you can get that finance approved, you know what? You're kind of stuck. You're back at square one again. So you can see you're basically entering the conversation in the client's mind, to coin the old phrase from copywriting land. And so that's exactly what we want to do with these 6 questions. Now, here's the deal. Let's string this together. So let's go back to question 1. So let's just suppose this is the sophisticated investor. And the actual problem is that they need more finance before they can purchase more properties. So the start of my copy might sound like this. If you are a sophisticated investor who is currently struggling to get finance approval for more properties, then listen up. All right, there we go. So simple. Question 1, question 2. Now, question 3 is this. Perhaps you've already seen other investment firms promising you that they can get finance approvals through their own networks for people who are highly leveraged. Now, what we find, so that's question 3, right? What have they already seen? What we found, though, based on clients that we've worked with who have been down that path, is that things haven't quite worked out. And so when they have gone down the path of using other investment firms, they might have found, and here's question 5, they might have found that whilst they had access to lots of properties through their broker channels, they didn't have access to the adequate financial resources to get you the extra financing required to purchase those properties. And that could leave you feeling extraordinarily frustrated when you know that there's great properties that you're missing out on that you could be using to build your portfolio on the simple fact that you can't get that extra finance. Now, see what we did there? We just went from question 1, we strung question 1 to question 2 to question 3, question 4 to question 5, into question 6, which then leads to the next part of your copy, which is where you would say, here's what we do instead. And then you would literally tell them, here's what I've got, here's what it'll do, here's what you need to do now. And that is it. That is as simple as it gets. And I know I'm not saying this is the sort of holy grail of copywriting by any stretch, but you know what? For a 15-minute tutorial, it will get you in the game. So go ahead and write that out for your client now. I hope this has been helpful. If it has, go ahead and hit share for me. Or if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please make sure you do so. I'll speak to you later.